Gentlemen, women hate taking care of the vast majority of the finances, and it is often a precursor to the end of the relationship or the marriage. Let me explain. I have a quick video here that I want to play for you that's about a minute long and got almost 9 million views. It went absolutely viral when I shared it on social media. Just a minute long. Let me play it for you first. We'll add some context, and I got some really interesting stories.
How old are you?
27.
28.
And how long have you been married?
About 2.5 years?
Yep.
Yeah.
But we've been together for about 5 years.
How do you handle the bills in your household?
So currently I handle all the bills, but she's on her way to be a doctor, so eventually she'll either take over all of them or like most of them, but she also had a job, so we were splitting it the same proportion we were making in income. So if I was making 60-40 or vice versa, that's what we were contributing to our bills as well.
What makes you think as a man that she would be comfortable as a doctor paying for everything as a woman?
She is such a motivated person, and that's the way I view it. She has a vision for her own life, and I'm supporting that right now. I view it as very empowering to her and to us as a couple that she wants to pursue this career path, and I'll do anything I can to protect that and encourage that and whatnot, because it'll pay off in the long term.
So you would be fine covering all the bills long term as well?
Honestly, yeah. Like right now, he's investing in my future, so I'm hoping that I can invest in our future in the future.
Isn't that interesting? So she said, he's investing in my future, and I hope that I'll be able to invest in our future in the future. She didn't say in his future. It's not like there was a plan for her to do the same thing back. There's this notion of Brifault's law. He was a French scientist, I believe, and he postulated that in the animal kingdom, the female, not the male, determines the length of the relationship. And where the female can derive no future benefit from the male, then that relationship will cease to exist. So the first thing that you got to understand, guys, and I know that this is a tough pill to swallow, and a lot of people really hate this, and many of the comments on that post were, it looks like a great relationship, I'm sure things will work out, why are you so insecure, Rich, blah, 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 the typical point and sputter. But the truth of the matter is, I've seen this movie many times before, and I've seen how it ends, and for the vast majority of cases, not in all cases, but in the vast majority of cases, what ends up happening is when she finds herself in a position in the relationship or in the marriage where she is better off, making more money, more successful, more competent, viewed by society as of higher value, that's usually when she wants to untie the knot or to end the relationship. It's not always a bad thing for him, which I'll explain at the end. In fact, often it's a silver lining for him, and he actually does very, very well. But that's the notion of Brifault's law, and this is actually very, very consistent throughout the entire animal kingdom. Now, she was looking at him with a very high degree of admiration, if I can put it that way, when he was speaking. She had this look of almost genuine burning desire on her face when he was talking about this plan to put her through medical school. She'd become a doctor, blah, blah, blah. But if you didn't catch it, you can slide the bar back and watch it again, but there was a slight change in her body language and her facial expression when he was talking about her taking over the finances when she'd have her medical degree and become a doctor. There's this inherent disgust within women when they find themselves in a position of looking after guys that they become very uncomfortable. Again, women are hypergamous. They have to adore a man. They have to look up towards a man, and it's impossible for her to look up to you if she finds herself in a position where she's better than you. One of the great precursors, and I've talked to many divorce lawyers about this, and you'll see them in podcast interviews as well, is that one of the early signs of a knot being untied is if she finds herself in a position where she's been out-promoted over him, like she's had successive promotions, makes a lot more money. That's often when she starts to look around and be like, my regular husband that was there for me, that put me through school or whatever, doesn't look as appealing as Kevin, the VP from sales, or Steve, the vice president of accounting, sort of thing. You see what I'm getting at here? Let me share an interesting story with you. Years ago, back in my 20s, I used to deal with this mechanic who was nearby, and I'm a car tuner guy. I like messing with cars and sort of souping them up and stuff like that. So I was always at his shop every couple months just doing something, tweaking something. And, he took a liking to me. We kind of became friendly, and he often would just drive me back after I would drop off the car. He says, let me give you a ride back. And during the ride, he would tell me about his life, and, he was a very successful mechanic, if I can put it that way, but he was a mechanic. He owned the shop, Italian guy, real salt of the earth, solid dude. Wife wanted a family, 4 kids, gave it all to her. She wanted to go to law school and become a lawyer. She had this ambition to become a lawyer. And I remember him telling me this story about, buying a condo downtown Toronto, and he would, she would stay there rather than stay out where they they lived out in the outskirts of the city because it saved travel and all these, like all this sorts of stuff. And he would take care of the kids and do all of their extracurriculars and the driving around while she was off going to law school. And he figured, this sort of thing would pay off in the long run, and she'd become a lawyer, and she would then contribute to the family, and, things would look great from there on in. Now, here's where it got interesting. I had moved at some point, and I hadn't seen him for a few years. I had to go back to the shop for something because his shop specialized in something with a particular car brand that I had at the time. And I went in there and I said, "Hey, where's Paul?" And his shop foreman, who I knew as well, said, "Well, oh, you didn't hear? He died." And I was like, "What?" He was in good, he was in his early 50s. He wasn't like obese or anything like that. He was in pretty good shape, always seemed chipper, maybe a little bit stressed, from work, from all the burden of everything that he was doing. But he always, seemed to be pretty good shape. And I said, "Well, what happened?" He goes, he used to have this little Frenchie dog with him, and he'd often be there early in the morning. And they said, one day they came in and they found him dead on the floor with the dog sitting beside him. And it was the absolute saddest thing. And I said, "Well, what happened?" He goes, "He had a heart attack." And I said to him, I go, "What do you mean he had a heart attack?" The guy was, they told me the story about, his wife and going to law school. And apparently she met somebody at law school and she had an affair and cheated on him and then divorced him. And after she got her law degree and all that sort of thing. And they said he basically died of a broken heart. They said his health went absolutely south after that. And one morning they came in and they found him dead. And I'm not saying that this happens in all scenarios, okay? But on a balance of probabilities in most cases, what usually ends up happening is that investment that guys make, husbands make into their wives, the whole richer and poorer and sickness and health till death do us part, blah, blah, blah. That's fine. And that's true from the man's perspective. Like, men will stay in relationships much longer than women will. Men tend to do it out of duty. But what ended up happening in this situation is, of course, that she left him. And I've seen this again, story dozens upon dozens upon dozens of times. Doesn't always happen. Now, back to the silver lining. The interesting thing about the silver lining is if a woman leaves you who's making more money than you in a marriage, then what ends up happening in family law in most cases is the transfer of wealth goes from the parent that earns more money to the one that earns less money. So in a situation like that, if you can stick it out, if you can make it past the heartbreak or even the betrayal of putting her through law school or putting her through medical school to get her medical degree, and if she wants to leave, sure, I'm sure you're going to be heartbroken and felt betrayed, but at the end of the day, you'll actually be better off because she'll end up having to pay you back or having to pay you over a certain period of time, especially if you have children with child support and all that sort of stuff. So it can work out. I know a lot of guys really, really struggle with it, and I've seen guys' health, deteriorate in situations. I've seen in an extreme situation like I talked about with my friend Paul, he ended up basically dying, in the shop floor. But it's something that a lot of people don't contemplate, and they don't understand the drive and the dynamic between relationships and what drives women to stick around and to want to be around it. Like I said earlier, women are hypergamous. They have to adore you. They have to be able to look up to you. When a woman finds herself in a position where she can no longer adore you and look up to you, that's the clock that ticks down to the end of the relationship. That contempt that she feels, even though you did everything right for years. She got the law degree, she got, her designation, makes a great living, has the, has a panache, like the status out there that she was lacking earlier on because maybe she was just a mom or something like that, or she was a waitress or whatever, and you helped her move past all that. Women don't care about those struggles. Okay, and like I said, when women deem that they can no longer receive future benefit from you, then the woman will often find herself in a position where she's reevaluating that relationship and will unlikely want to stay in that relationship. Some, as a function of understanding family law, will actually just stay because they know that they've got the farm to lose and they'd have to give up a good chunk of their wealth or even support payments. But that's how things go. Anyway, you guys let me know what your personal experience has been in the comments below. If you guys want to know everything that I wish I knew when I was a young man that I know today, check out the School of Unplugging. There's over 40 hours now of private classroom material that helps deal with things like vetting women for wife material, building businesses, making extreme wealth, self-care, taking care of your body and all that stuff as you age. Go check that out and all the other top pinned comments. See you guys later. Peace.
I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up.